Hey everybody, it's Rabbit. Welcome to the channel. And today we're going to do an update on our Magach grind series because there were quite a few changes both in terms of battle rating and in terms of how the tech tree is sorted. So we're going to run through those changes real quick and try to give you at least some feel for how it impacted their place in the game and their place in the tech tree. Kicking things off, we have the Magach 2 is now folded with the Magach 1. Both of them are currently at 7-7. The update in BR didn't really hurt them that much. They still have a reasonably competent heat round to deal with some of the heavier targets, and honestly they face enough lighter targets that the M82 shell still mostly works. Overall, I think these two tanks are in a pretty good spot, especially because the update also added the ability where foldered vehicles only cost half as much RP to research, so the Magach 2 is now noticeably cheaper to research than it was before, and it's also optional. You could just skip it if you didn't want it or didn't need it. Next up, we have the Magach 3 and the Magach 6. The 6 is now folded with the 3. In my opinion, the 3 is kind of the better vehicle. I don't completely hate the 6, but I do broadly find the 3 is better. Overall, I don't think this really helps or hurts either of them, but it does make it to where you can skip the 6, which doesn't really work in its favor because it doesn't stand out all that much anyway. The Magach 3 is pretty much unchanged and it's still pretty solid. Next up, we have the Magach 6A. It was moved out of a folder with the Magach 6 and now has the Magach 5 folder under it. It's kind of an odd decision because the 6A and the 5 don't really have anything in common. However, the 5 is just objectively better than the 6 and basically all the other 8.0s. It has a really nice dart, has a laser rangefinder, has explosive reactive armor. The Magach 5 is really solid, and getting it for half the research points you would pay normally is also a pretty good deal. Overall, I think this is a net positive change, even if I don't personally like the 6. Next up, we have a three-way. So the Magach 6B and the Magach Hydra are now folded with the 6R. Now, originally the Hydra was folded with the 6R, but the 6B was its own separate thing. Now they're all kind of folded together. This means the 6R is now mandatory, and you could optionally upgrade to the 6B. It is technically better, but you could also just skip it. The 6R is perfectly fine. And of course, this is absolutely amazing for the Hydra because while it's basically in the same position as it was before, now it takes half as much research points to get it, which is really amazing. It's an S tier tank and it's easier to get. The 6R is solid. The 6B is an optional upgrade you could go for over the R if you really want to. I think this is one of the better folders in the entire tech tree because it just presents you with nice options you don't really need but that are useful. Next up, we have the 6M with the 6C foldered under it. This is another kind of odd one as these two vehicles don't have that much in common, but it is what it is. The 6M is kind of in an awkward spot because Israel doesn't have a 9.0 lineup right now, but this does make the 6C a little more viable as your backup to the Merkavas because it's noticeably cheaper to research and spade than basically any other 9.3 that you could back up your Merkavas with, and it still has the fairly good shell with over 400 millimeters of penetration to back it up. So I do think this helps out the 6C a fair bit and makes it very viable as a really good backup vehicle. And the last major change is we have the Magach 7C is now folded with the Galbatosh, and this is kind of an awkward change. So the Magach 7C is now cheaper to research, but both of these are essentially end-of-the-line vehicles now, whereas previously only the 7C was. So the Galbatosh is more annoying to spade, but the Magach 7C is slightly easier to research. Overall, I don't think this really changes the math. I think by and large I would still recommend the Galbatosh over the 7C in most situations. It's an interesting change. I don't really like the concept of foldering end-of-the-line vehicles unless they're going to do away with the end-of-the-line tax, but it is what it is, and it makes both of the vehicles a little awkward to spade and kind of artificially buffs the Magach 6C because now the Magach 6C is just generally easier to get access to and easier to spade than both of them, and still has essentially the same gun and a lot of the same subsystems. So it puts them both in a bit of an awkward spot. I do generally think out of the three, the Galbatosh is kind of the better choice in terms of quality, but the 6C is a lot more accessible than either this or the Magach 7C right now. As far as the overall battle rating shuffling, 7.3 was for the most part removed as a viable lineup for Israel. 8.3 was also essentially removed as every vehicle there was taken out and the 8.0s basically stayed where they were. Additionally, 9.0 only has one vehicle in the entire tech tree, so not really worth playing. So Israel did lose some battle ratings, which compresses the Magachs across fewer battle ratings and means you need fewer of them. However, the current Magach tech tree only requires you to research a total of 6 vehicles to get to the end, and the rest of them are all optional foldered vehicles, so it does make the grind significantly easier than it used to be, and you can pick and choose what you need based on lineups, so that's at least nice, even if it is a little unfortunate that the 6M at 9.0 is one of the mandatory vehicles, as it is one of the few vehicles that doesn't really have a good home right now. Overall, I think the changes were very positive for the tech tree. As I mentioned in my video, I thought the Magach tech tree could really use a lot more folders, and that is exactly what we got. It resembles a filing cabinet right now, but that's kind of a good thing. They needed this overhaul to not be tedious to grind. And that wraps up our video for today. Hope you enjoyed it, hope you had fun. Overall, I do really like these changes for the Magachs. I like the fact that you can just go through the mandatory Magachs and then pick and choose what you need. It makes grinding this part of the tech tree less arduous, gives you a better sense of progression as you go through the vehicles. Overall, I just think it helps it out a lot, and hopefully this will help other people find the Magachs that are actually good. There are a few gems in here that are pretty fun to play, or at least very functional, and of course you have the absolutely amazing vehicles like the Hydra. So I hope you guys do enjoy going through that. I hope you enjoy researching, and I hope you had fun watching this video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe. I will see you guys next time.